So we bought awning fabric, and we're going to have an awning made, the older tent type awning for the 73 Holiday Rambler. And we sent it to a place that makes awnings, makes this type of awning. And they told us that it was too long, that they wouldn't make anything over about, I think it was 18 feet or something like that. So we said, well, ship it back to us and we'll make it ourselves. We did buy the poles and the rope, hardware and everything from them, but we decided we would make this ourselves. I wanted to show this shot of the awning before we go into all the details, because it gives you an idea of what it's going to look like in the end. Making a 22-foot awning, I can't really show a good wide-angle shot of the whole process. So here's what it looks like in the end. So hopefully when as we're going through this process, you'll be able to keep that in mind and kind of see each part that we're making. And this turned into kind of a long video, so I'm going to do this one in two parts. This is part one of making a tent type awning for our 1973 Holiday Rambler. So we decided to make our own awning, and this is a tent type awning. It's not a roll-up awning. And we found this material, which I think is going to be really pretty with the colors of the camper, and it's outdoor fabric. So we're using outdoor fabric, we're using outdoor thread. I found that I was missing some video about the beginning of this process, and so I'm just going to describe it here. This awning, the measurements of the awning, it's 22 feet long by 8 feet deep, and so obviously we had to sew together several strips to make the 22 feet in length, and so we did that using French seams. I'm going to describe how that French seam works. So a French seam is basically a way to sew a seam along the edge just to join two panels together where you don't have a rough edge showing. So you'll take your fabric and put it either back to back or front to front, and just sew along the edge, and then unfold it and fold it back around the other way, and then sew another seam so that you cover up the first seam. And then when you unfold it again, on one side you've got a nice flat seam, on the other side you just have a little, sort of a little tunnel almost, or a little tab of fabric that has the rough edge inside it so that you don't see it. So that's what we did to sew these panels together. I think there were 5 panels that it took to get the 22 feet. It's been a few weeks now since we did this, but I think there were 5 panels, and we used the French seams to sew those. And so now I think we're going to pick back up as we're talking about in the video, talking about how we're doing the French seam. So the next step is to trim the edge within about 1/8 of an inch of the seam that was just sewn, so we can flip it over and do another seam. So here's after the first seam and after trimming off the excess. So the next thing we're going to do is iron the French seam before we run the next stitch along it. It'll make it lay down better and be easier to sew it. Here's what the French seam looks like after it's sewn. Okay, so here's what the French seam looks like on the front side after it's sewn. So we've got the main part of the awning all sewn together with the French seams, and now we're going to be working on the skirt that hangs down around the edge. These pieces will be sewn together end to end, also with a French seam. These two here will make one side, and these will make the other side, the two short sides. And then they'll be sewn onto the big piece. So these two are the skirts that will go on the short edges of the awning, not the long edge. And what we've got here is bias tape that will be sewn onto the edge of each of these. These were actually sewn together with a French seam like we showed just a minute ago. This bias tape on this one has been pinned and is ready to be sewn together. So with this bias tape, we plan on attaching some additional fringe onto the bias tape, which will actually be the edge, the bottom edge. But here's an awning that we had made for our other camper, and this is a different type of edging that goes on here. This is actually a scalloped edge. Ours are going to be flat, but that's another type of edging that can be put on. Here's a look at the fringe that will be sewn on after we get the bias tape on there, which will make the bottom edge of the skirt that goes around the awning. Here's one of the side skirts that's just been sewn to the side of the awning, and this is the top part of the awning, and we've got a reinforced kind of a heavy patch here that will provide reinforcement to this corner that's going to have a lot of tension on it when the awning's put up. This will also end up being a French seam, and this part will be cut off. So that's part one of how we made our tent type awning for our travel trailer. Stay tuned for part two coming up real soon. And if you'd like to follow our progress and be notified when we have a new video coming out, then click on the wheel in the lower left hand corner and you'll find out more about our renovation and restoration of this 1973 Holiday Rambler.